Good evening, family. My name is Darrin 1831 Collins. I am an author, educator, and scholar. And with any work that I do, whether it be my authorship or my scholarship, one thing that I want to promote is a healthy Black self esteem for foundational Black Americans, understanding the way that we see ourselves and the outward image that we are projecting. Before I jump into the nitty gritty of what I want to talk about today, which is those prophetic images that we see in Native Invisibility that are coming true right now with the current civil unrest, I really want to give an opportunity to celebrate Father's Day. And as I mentioned before, we have our Native Invisibility trivia game. All right. So with this package, you all will be receiving a full set of our daddy daughter date cards. And once again, those cards will have great ideas for daddy and daughter activities. You'll also receive a copy of the debut novel Native Invisibility and my children's book, Zola's Daddy Daughter Dates. All right. So the first question that we have, and anybody participating, you have until June 17th to respond to my direct messenger. So respond to Darrin Collins. And the winners will be announced on June 20th. So that first question is, what two times does Mr. Lucas appear in the book? So where does Mr. Lucas appear in Native Invisibility? And what does Jamal learn from him? What lessons does Jamal take from those interactions that he has with Mr. Lucas, whether that be positive or negative? So in my direct messenger, you guys can respond to this question. I'm going to announce the winners on June 20th. So jumping into the imagery that I had envisioned prior to writing Native Invisibility, in this lower right side, you have the original title that I was thinking of for the book, which was Whole to Whole. And that Whole to Whole you'll find in the book as well. It's a reference to Adam and Eve, where God is creating a whole in man to fashion his completion or his complement, the woman. And you will also see that imagery repeated of the red line train, which became very important during the current civil unrest. In fact, the city of Chicago shut down public transportation, specifically the Red Line, because it connects the north and south side of Chicago. And I'll get more into that too when we get into the later images of the bridges being drawn as well. So there was very clear evidence in the response of the city of Chicago and of the cities nationally that the response to systemic racism is compounding systemic racism, right? More systemic racism, which isn't funny, but it brings a smile to a Black man's face, right? Also, in this imagery, you'll see in both examples. So, my understanding of the story Native Invisibility was that it's a journey, and it's one young man's journey to traverse oppression and become a man. And we see in the imagery, both in the two titles of Native Invisibility, that you have a young man on the streets by himself. This is in this imagery. We have the city of Chicago. In the lower left corner, you'll see the skyline in the background of Chicago, and on the top image at the very bottom is the old Soldier Field, right? So if you're from Chicago, you know that Soldier Field is on Lakeshore Drive. And you also know that Soldier Field has undergone several renovations to look kind of like a spaceship now. Um, with this imagery, too, there is a prominent image of a tank in the foreground, which I decided to remove in the final version of the book, but we are releasing a clean version of the book for teaching purposes and for educational purposes with the tank on the front. And I decided to remove the tank, not because it's not in the book, but primarily because it off centers the symmetry and balance of the image, in my opinion. However, with the current climate and the fact that National Guard was released in multiple cities in the United States, I feel like it makes a lot more sense to have the tank on the front of the book as it relates to the civil unrest. In terms of this bottom picture in the middle, this is an actual picture that I took last week. I drove or rode on my bike on a highway in Chicago. I can see my dog here. He wants a little attention. But I rode for about 4 miles down Lakeshore Drive. I was riding south on the northbound side of Lakeshore Drive. And this is very telling for me, but also represents the imagery of a man by himself in his thoughts in the middle of the city of Chicago, which is very much so represented in the cover imagery of the book. So, like I said, one of the cruxes of the book is three boys taking off in a foot race and being pulled over by the police. And this is kind of like the turning point of the main character. And in fact, where the main character says that a lot of his inspiration for New Africa or this nation that he's building comes from. And with the response of the nation to civil unrest and to police brutality being more police surveillance and being more police presence in the cities themselves, we also saw and continue to see this kind of visceral response from citizens towards police and but also towards authority in general. And this top right picture shows the visceral response and the visceral nature of that response. Punch a cop today, just tagged randomly on top of an awning, right? But as I also mentioned, the drawing of those bridges. So you see in the top left, and I spoke upon this in a previous video, but Chicago drew all of the bridges that go along the Chicago River. And if you know anything about the geography of Chicago, the Chicago River is what connects the north and south sides of the city. So it's very difficult to get from the south side to the north side, or otherwise, if there is no red line train, so the 95th red line train, if that is not running. Also, if you do not have the bridges down so that you can traverse the Chicago River, it will be very difficult to go along north south in Chicago, right? And bottom picture, you just see that heavy police presence in response to police brutality. Now, some of the very specific images that we see in Native Invisibility are the destruction of the police station, and we witnessed that in Minneapolis, the setting of the fire of the police station. We also see that imagery of fire throughout the book as well. Very biblical tone to that imagery. In this question above, so in this other tagging, how do you ask for one thing for 400 years and still have to take it? In Native Invisibility, there's a very tangible understanding of what the power structure is. And we're also seeing that tangible understanding right now as the response to systemic racism is heightened and more systemic racism. That whatever liberty, whatever freedom is going to be had has to be taken. In Native Invisibility, one of the mantras is support yourself and heaven will help. And we're identifying that in taking steps towards liberation, there is divine intervention. And I will get to that on the next slide, just identifying page numbers and specific details from the book that overlap with those from reality, right? So, just to highlight some of those very key, the key imagery that we see, and to give information about the pagination and where you can find it in the book. So, this book was released over a year ago now. It was released on June 21st, 2019. And we had already witnessed a number of incidents of police brutality, specifically under Barack Obama's regime. We witnessed and identified a number of those incidents. Um, and they are the catalyst for that kind of visceral response, but for that push towards liberation, just identifying that the Black body can be broken in this country, right? So the Black spirit has to uh, assume a posture of battle and assume a posture of war, so to speak. And on pages 248 to 283, we see that catalyst in the forming of the Melanoid Nation. Um, we also see the destruction of downtown areas on pages 9 through 32. In terms of the military presence in our cities, throughout the book, I identify the role of the military and the overreaction of the United States by assuming a posture of military defense um, prematurely often, right? So it's very hard to issue the military on your own citizens, particularly when they are fighting for a very just cause, right? And I would also identify plagues and divine intervention on pages 153 to 169. And we see this sort of divine intervention in the COVID-19 situation. I referenced this before as well, that in reality, in our lives, we saw thousands of men be released from prison because of COVID-19, and also simultaneously, their charges were not violent, but they also were not detracting from society as a whole, right? And in the book, the purpose of the book is to identify Yogi. Chill. The purpose of the book is to identify the construction and development of the Melanoid Nation. And in our reality, we see that Melanoid Nation coming together and that Black Power fist really forming with the Black Lives Matter movement. If you want to use this Native Invisibility, my book, as a curricular tool, if you want to use it in the classroom, as I said, we now currently have a clean version of the book that makes it palatable for middle school and high school. I have a curriculum that I've been working on, and the curriculum is available upon request. So just get in touch with me in my direct messenger or through my website at collinscubicle.com, which you see on the screen. And we can discuss potentially me speaking to your class about these issues and many of the visions that I had. And we could also discuss how to implement the curriculum so that you are teaching a socially just curricula, but also so that we are identifying very key issues within our society and that affect the least of us in order to promote that healthy Black esteem. All right. So, without further ado, one thing that I wanted to get into right now is a very brief reading. You hear some of the civil unrest continuing in my background, along with my dog. All right, but I want to continue a very brief reading of Native Invisibility, and this reading is very much so related to who I identify as the prophets. Yogi, stop. Who I identify as the prophets in the United States history or in global history. And I am identifying or linking the term downpresser throughout the book is used to identify the oppressive forces, but also the individuals responsible for others' oppression. And one of the other notions in the book, as our good brother Ali says, there as you try to separate a man from his own soul, you only strengthen his resolve and strengthen his grasp on his own soul and lose your own, right? So I think that is being supported in our realities, but it's also being supported in the book Native Invisibility. And I'm linking this to a Nina Simone and Bob Marley song called Down Presser Man, in which they are discussing the fate of the down presser. And I just want to play a snippet of Bob Marley's version just so that you all hear the lyrics and some of the concepts that are within the book as well. Mercy on the judgment. So he's saying, mercy on the judgment. Mercy on the judgment. Oh, Lord, down, pressing. Where you gonna run to? Tell me down, pressing. Where you gonna run? Down, pressing. Where you gonna run to? Oh, that day. Unto the rocks. Rocks will be melted when you run to the rocks. So when you run to the rocks will be melted. Rocks will be melted. Oh, Lord. And when you run to the sea will be boiling. When you run to the sea will be boiling. Run to the sea. So the song is discussing that kind of Armageddon or Judgment Day premise of the downpresser attempting to run to the rocks to escape his judgment, attempting to run to the sea to escape his judgment. But wherever he runs, the water is boiling, the rocks will be melting, the earth is crumbling under them. And this is a lot of what we are seeing currently, in my opinion. And it's not necessarily going to get better for the downpresser without some sort of repentance or compensation. And we could talk about that on a different time, right? What we need to identify now are the tangibles that we as a people are asking for. And one thing that I have consistently said are two tangibles, right? One, we need them to cut the check. The end. We need compensation for the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors, but also for our own oppression and witnessing our family be murdered in the streets. Two, we need our brothers and sisters released from prison. Anybody who's in prison for non-violent crimes that have not harmed society. Anybody in prison for marijuana crimes and marijuana has been made legal. Anybody in prison for anything of that nature, right? We need to demand them to be released so that we can have more soldiers in the field as well. So, without further ado, I do want to discuss this idea of the downpresser, but also the fate that awaits the downpresser. And this is one scene in the book, and there's a character named General Nash. So General Nash is kind of the antagonist in the book, who's setting the tone for the downpressers, right? And he's the voice and the insight that we see in that community. I remember on that day, I went down the picked over aisles. I tripped over an object. Reaching down, I ran my hand across it. It was a bike frame. The aluminum of the bike felt cool on my hand. I touched every inch of the bike. The chain felt slick. I nicked my hand on the pedal. The sting aroused my frustration. I had already stubbed my toe on the contraption. I tossed the bike slightly. With the little strength I had, I heard a crunch. Following the sound, I searched near my feet. Under the bike tire, I found 2 bottles. They felt like water. I opened the first and took the longest gulp of my existence. It was the source. The mission was worth it. So at this point, following the theme of the Down Person song, which is much of my inspiration for this vision, the sun has not set. I'm also drawing inspiration from the story of Cain and Abel in the idea that Cain was sent on a journey to walk the earth and never be part of a community, would constantly be an outsider. So this is the vision that I'm seeing. And because the sun is not setting, the general and many others have gone blind. They also do not have a language. I'm thinking of the idea of the Tower of Babel. So as I said, a lot of this is drawing on biblical inspiration, but also on that inspiration from the late great Nina Simone and Bob Marley as well. As I turned down the next aisle, I saw a human. It was a white woman. She was crying. Her hair was matted and her clothes tattered. I went over to touch her, to help her. It was my wife. She was completely blind now. We were all almost blind. Between the sun and the lack of nutrition, our bodies were falling apart. I was filled with joy. The mission was complete. I found her. She found me, my soulmate. My heart flooded with memories of our wedding day. Steve was there. My wife was gorgeous. She was a choreographer. She made me memorize a dance. Our song was Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis. We killed the dance that night. Her body was frail now. She was defenseless in the new world of ours. Corinne. I saw her. I touched her, but she didn't recognize me. I couldn't speak to her. Let her know we were safe. All I wanted to do was kiss her, ask where the children were, hold her and shoulder her tears. Instead, she fought me. Understandably, she fought me. She was blind and vulnerable. She hit me with mighty blows, blows that I deserved, blows that I needed to take. I ran out of the store, tripping and stumbling on every obstacle. I sobbed when I reached the light. My mouth was bleeding. The sun dried it up. It was hot, but I didn't mind anymore. I wanted my wife, my family, my world. I couldn't even think of my children. It was too much. So everybody has been scattered at this point in the story, and the story is told out of chronological order. But in this future Armageddon space, the general and everybody on Earth has been scattered, and there's no language, so there's no way to communicate, and people are going blind. So it's very hard for people to communicate. As he finds his wife, there's no way to tell her that she's safe, even though he had accomplished his goal of finding his family. After that first encounter, I followed my wife for 3 months, but kept my distance. She was gorgeous. I watched her silhouette from afar, dying slowly. I couldn't leave her. I was chasing a shadow, but she was mine. I made a vow. She is my wife. I am her husband. She just didn't know. Corinne had difficulty finding shelter in this new world. She wasn't threatening. She was a dancer, completely blind and petite. Oppressors wandered everywhere. Life was a struggle for us all. The earth was stingy. We were foreign. Nature tormented us. The sun ate at our skin, vision, and health. I was almost blind at this point. Corinne stayed out, exposed to the sun, far more than I was used to do, or could bear. This is probably why she went totally blind before me. Blisters grew on my face, back, and hands in my effort to chase my wife. I had difficulty keeping up with her at times. My vision was failing me. She was quicker than I remembered. Survival brings out the best in us in many ways. We made it to Pennsylvania. I am not quite sure how far into the state we were. In Pennsylvania, Corinne found her way into a junkyard. There were a lot of prime resources there during the exile. It was also a scary place to be blind. At the beginning of the exile, gangs started to form at stationary shelters like prisons, hospitals, and grocery stores. She would have no idea if she was being watched. She had no idea that I was following her for more than 2 months. My wife was precious and at risk. She had been in the junkyard for the better part of what felt like an hour. I've lost all sense of time since the sun never sets. Like all of us, she was looking for food or water. She hadn't fully adapted to being blind yet. I attest, it was more than I was prepared to accept. My eyesight was fading by the day. At this point, Corinne was a shadow. I could only see her silhouette, but I knew it was her. She was my wife. She made it to an open field. I believed we were being watched. I stayed behind. I lost sight of her. It was the last time I saw her alive. It was the last time I moved around a mound of earth. It could have been a pile of garbage as well. I caught sight of her again. She was meandering through the field. She tripped and fell behind what I assumed to be a car. Bodies, dark shapes rushed towards her. They looked like ravens, but I couldn't be sure. They could just as well be humans. I was too far out to tell. Ah! My wife let out a blood curdling scream. It was the first voice I had heard in years. It hurt. I let this all happen. The world didn't have to come to this. I should have never gone back to Soldier Field. I hung my head temporarily. It was all my fault. I couldn't let anything take my wife away from me again. I ran to her aid. So, thank you very much for listening to the story. I hope that you all catch more and are able to purchase the book and see much of the insight that I had prior to these current issues of civil unrest for sure. To wrap up, once again, we will have our second trivia question. And you all have until June 17th, and that is Wednesday, June 17th, 2020, to respond to my inbox to either question 1 or question 2. And question 1, as you remember, was about Mr. Lucas and where Jamal had seen him and what he had learned from him. Our second question is, what is the mantra of Native Invisibility? And I have said it already today. What is the mantra of Native Invisibility? How does the mantra relate to the story? So you guys will have to explain how the mantra relates to the journey that Jamal takes. All right. Once again, all books and merchandise can be purchased at collinscubicle.com. Once again, that's collinscubicle.com. And thank you very much for your time.